Professor Martini?
Yes?
International tourism agents. We have a few questions for you about vocational tourism.
I knew this moment would come sooner or later. Please, do come in. Do sit down, gentlemen.
I apologize for disturbing you, sir, but you are our last hope.
And your first question is?
Oh yes, well, how and in what way did you start to notice this existence of this new kind of tourism, the vocational tourism?
It's been 2 decades since the very first vocational tourist made their appearance on the Adriatic coast. There's no exact moment from when this phenomenon started. It has been, as often occurs, a crawling process, slow and imperceptible at the beginning, then faster and more frenetic, which has shown us a new way of experiencing holiday time and has progressively transformed the way we think about and organize the tourist industry. This new kind of tourist was no different from the others. He was often the same as ever, but with a different attitude. If the traditional tourist saw the holiday as an occasion in which to suspend his encoded identity, for this kind of tourist, journey represented an opportunity to develop his interests and a new sense of membership. And through the filtering of his passions, the possibility of achieving a different identity from that socially assigned to him. The first example of these new tourists appeared in the 70s in the guise of those we used to call people of the night, who frequented the newborn discos with constancy and passion. These strange creatures had very little in common with the traditional tourist. First of all, they didn't belong to a touristic seasonality, but used to come here on the weekends throughout the year. Secondly, they didn't choose the Adriatic coast for its famous and conventional character, but for a specific pastime they could carry out here. They used to come to the seaside, but the sea was only a background to a very different activity. Over time, we noticed that a part of these new tourists was giving life to some new models of aggregation and some singular ways of using the territory. Auto-grill rendezvous, the pub as a waiting place, the discotheque crawl, the after hours at dawn, or the rite of eating donuts after the disco. They then went to bed, whilst normal tourists were about to begin a hard day of holiday-making on the beach. And of course, we noticed that for many of them, Saturday night fever wasn't simply a hobby, but a concrete opportunity to express a new identity, far removed from the one assigned to them at school or in the workplace. For many decades, we faced a precise kind of client who chose his destination to correspond to his idea of evasion. Then we faced a new kind of passion consumer who claimed to need time to himself, qualitatively different from his norm, while at the same time having the necessity to express a universe of values as a definition of his own identity and as a tool in confronting other people. Nothing at all, however, was generating any visible modification in the system that produced tourism. It was only a simple switch, a trivial change of perspective that was nevertheless able to produce an epochal transformation in the tourist industry.
But how is the relationship between tourist resources, destination and products articulated?
As I have already pointed out, the vocational tourist offer is the result of a combination process between the vocation of an area and the vocation of a group of consumers of various sizes. Each area's goal, therefore, will be to make its own offer seem characteristic and distinctive, in some ways we may say unavoidable, in the eyes of the consumer, who increasingly takes care to make his own tourist attraction coincide with his own identity, and values models, but at the same time is also increasingly stimulated and distracted by a market that is becoming more competitive and dense with each day that passes. An area's tourist vocation is a dynamic rather than elastic structure. As we have already seen, this means that it is a structure that takes its ideas from some constant identity factors for that area, morphological, historical, etc., but which it can also decline according to the way in which demands evolves, and or is necessary to intercept a particular segment of the public. This vocation is therefore based on a series of pre-tourism elements, which I have called resources, that only assume the form of tourist experiences, products, product lines, after some suitable transformation work, and which bring about the so-called destination brand when they reach their final composition. What emerges is a hierarchical organization model for the product area that we have summarized. This is a diagram. What we would like to point out here are the competitive and cooperative dynamics that are created in this context, and which represent one of the main new elements offered by the tourism of vocational tourism that the former concern. First of all, it is necessary to consider the fact that in this context, competition between areas primarily takes place based on vocations, and only on a secondary basis on destinations or destination brands. A multi-vocation destination, such as Rimini, for example, competes with other seaside resorts in the beach segment, with business destinations in the trade fair and congress segment, and with entertainment districts in the nightlife discotheque segment, etc., etc. It may sometimes occur that this competitive need becomes cooperative, as the need to establish a certain type of offer precedes the one for competing for customers with similar areas. It may also occur that this cooperation is not limited to just the tourist context, but may also include forms of collaboration with all the producers of goods and services that regard the content of our offer with interest, being in the same vocation segment, and thus giving rise to basically unprecedented chains. The destination brand does not disappear, however. To the contrary, it is increasingly appears as an umbrella brand that can sum up the individual vocational specification brands and create a common direction. Sì. The destination brand, sì, sì.
Ho 1 minuto 26 e comunque c'è stato un numero del telefono.
It's actually a very concrete structure that can easily be applied to existing tourist portfolio. It's no accident that these structures already exist. They can be defined. The field of operation for these structures is vast, as there are possible new markets with different rules from the traditional ones. It is therefore possible to modify the market profile of a tourist structure, a tour operator, or a destination, and the way in which the supply answers the demand. There is also the need to conceive and develop new tourist attractions that, born from the identity and resources of the specific territory, are able to make the difference by exploiting distinctive characteristics of a structure or destination. They can be individual structures or permanent territorial infrastructures, such as museums, rather than more ephemeral ones. It is no accident either that event strategy has become a fundamental element in the tourist industry, as an event can attract new influxes and exalt the image of the territory. The same can be said for holiday accommodation, that is no longer an accessory to a vacation, but has become a fundamental attraction in its own right. Hotels and restaurants have themselves become destinations, an integral part of the image of the territory, and should therefore fulfill this role. It has become necessary to construct a line of vocational products on a territorial level. A wine route, for example, is a tourist product that combines diverse assets: the landscape, the accommodation, a winery, a trattoria, etc., in a single itinerary, and at the same time tells the story of that territory. A predisposition towards the realization of such products can reflect greatly on the success of a destination, while at the same time unifying diverse brands under one territorial umbrella. But even more important, it is the clear definition of a tourist product and its functional surroundings. The tourist experience begins long before and lasts long after the time spent on the actual holiday. Therefore, the instruments used in the preparation of the tourist experience, the creation of the dream, the exchange of information between the various parties, the storytelling, the interaction between product and the consumer, the publicity, must be considered an integral part of the experience and developed accordingly. This last consideration is the most important, as it clearly shows the usefulness of vocational tourist experience engineering. That's about it, gentlemen.
I really don't know how to thank you, sir.
Brandy is always welcome at Christmas.
You can count on it. Thank you, Professor. Another case solved.